Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about something crucial today: the necessity of cutting ties with a man when it becomes evident that his presence in your life is not just unhelpful but actively destructive. Respect is not a luxury in a relationship. It is the very foundation upon which all meaningful human connections are built. Without it, love, trust, and communication crumble into dysfunction. If a man repeatedly disrespects you, it is not just a minor flaw in his character. It is an indication of a fundamental lack of regard for your dignity as an individual. And when respect is absent, a relationship ceases to be a partnership. It becomes a one-sided struggle for dominance, where your self-worth is slowly eroded. Disrespect does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it seeps in gradually, disguising itself in sarcasm, dismissiveness, or passive aggression. It may start with small, seemingly insignificant comments, a joke at your expense, a dismissive wave of the hand when you speak, an eye roll when you share your thoughts. These are subtle cues that indicate a deeper problem. He does not take you seriously. And when a man does not take you seriously, he does not see you as an equal. Words are powerful. A man who constantly belittles you with his words is shaping the way you perceive yourself, even if you do not realize it. If every time you express an idea, he responds with condescension, telling you that you think too much or shouldn't worry your pretty little head about it, he is teaching you to doubt yourself. And doubt, when nurtured over time, can transform into self-silencing. And you begin to question whether your thoughts are even worth expressing, whether your emotions are valid, whether you should speak up at all. This is the silent destruction of confidence, and it happens so subtly that by the time you recognize it, you may already be deeply entangled in self-doubt. Disrespect is not confined to words. It is also revealed in actions. If he consistently disregards your time, making plans and canceling them at his convenience, he is communicating that your schedule does not matter. If he ignores your boundaries, pushing you to do things you are uncomfortable with, he is telling you that your personal limits are irrelevant. If he dismisses your emotions, calling you too sensitive when you express hurt, he is subtly reinforcing the idea that your feelings are an inconvenience rather than something to be acknowledged and understood. This pattern of behavior is not simply inconsiderate, it is corrosive. It chips away at your sense of self until you begin to believe that you are asking for too much, when in reality you are asking for the bare minimum. There is also a more insidious form of disrespect, one that masquerades as love. A man may claim to care for you deeply, but if his care is expressed in the form of control, you must question whether it is love at all. If he dictates what you wear, who you can speak to, or how you should behave, he is not respecting you, he is exerting power over you. A relationship should be a union between two autonomous individuals, not a dynamic where one person dictates the terms of the other's existence. Love does not seek to diminish, it seeks to elevate. It encourages growth rather than restricting freedom. It is crucial to understand that disrespect is often cyclical. A man who has a pattern of disrespecting you will not suddenly change unless he is willing to confront and correct his behavior. He may offer apologies, but if those apologies are not followed by real, tangible changes in his actions, they are nothing more than empty words designed to pacify you. True remorse is demonstrated through consistent effort, not momentary regret. If he continues to belittle, dismiss, or undermine you after claiming to do better, he is showing you that his words are meaningless, and you must take him at his actions, not his promises. Some people stay in relationships with disrespectful men because they have been conditioned to believe that all relationships require endurance, that love means tolerating hardship, that a man's behavior can be changed with enough patience and understanding. But this is a dangerous misconception. While relationships do require effort, they should not require the sacrifice of your self-respect. You cannot fix a man who refuses to acknowledge his faults, nor should you try. A relationship should not feel like a battle where your worth is constantly being tested. It should feel like a place where your voice is heard, your presence is valued, and your dignity is upheld. It is not weak to walk away from a man who disrespects you. In fact, it requires immense strength. It requires the ability to recognize that you deserve more, that you are not obligated to tolerate behavior that diminishes you, that staying in a toxic relationship out of fear, guilt, or habit is not noble, it is self-destructive. Cutting ties with a man who repeatedly disrespects you is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of self-preservation, and self-preservation is not selfish. It is necessary. If you find yourself in a situation where a man consistently disregards your feelings, your opinions, or your worth, you must make a decision. You can either continue to tolerate the erosion of your self-esteem, hoping that one day he will wake up and see your value, or you can recognize that the only person who truly needs to see your value is you. Because once you do, you will no longer accept anything less than the respect you deserve. Manipulation is one of the most insidious forms of control because it often operates beneath the surface of awareness. It is not always obvious, nor does it always take the form of blatant coercion. Instead, it disguises itself in concern, in guilt, in subtle distortions of reality that leave you questioning your own perception. A man who manipulates you does not necessarily shout, nor does he always demand compliance directly. Instead, he plays with your emotions, your sense of obligation, and even your own understanding of truth to get what he wants without ever appearing forceful. And that makes it all the more dangerous. The first sign of manipulation is distortion. When you bring up an issue or express dissatisfaction, a manipulative man will often twist the narrative, making you question whether the problem even exists. This is commonly known as gaslighting, a term that describes the deliberate attempt to make someone doubt their own reality. If you recall an incident where he said something hurtful, he may claim, "I never said that," or "You're imagining things." If you confront him about his behavior, he may accuse you of overreacting or being irrational. Over time, this pattern chips away at your confidence in your own perceptions. You start to wonder whether you are the problem, whether you are simply too sensitive, whether your emotions are valid at all. And the moment you begin doubting your own judgment, he gains control over you, not through force, but through the erosion of your certainty. Manipulation is also fueled by guilt. A man who seeks to control you emotionally will often use guilt as a tool to shape actions. If you express the desire to do something independently, he may respond with, "I just want to spend time with you. Do you not care about me?" If you set a boundary, he may say, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me?" The implication here is clear. You are responsible for his happiness, and any assertion of your own needs is a betrayal. This creates a situation where you feel obligated to prioritize his emotions over your own, not because you genuinely want to, but because you fear the consequences of not doing so. And this is not love. It is manipulation disguised as devotion. Another common tactic of manipulation is playing the victim. No matter what the situation, a manipulative man will position himself as the one who has been wronged. If he is caught in a lie, he may shift the blame onto you, claiming that he only lied because you are too controlling or don't trust him enough. If he fails to fulfill a commitment, he will have an endless list of excuses. Work stress, family problems, past trauma, anything to deflect responsibility away from himself. While it is true that people have struggles, a pattern of constant victimhood is a deliberate strategy to avoid accountability. The moment you find yourself comforting the very person who has hurt you, convincing yourself that you must be more understanding, you need to realize that you are being manipulated into tolerating behavior that should not be tolerated. Another deeply troubling form of manipulation is emotional blackmail. This is when a man threatens consequences, whether directly or indirectly, if you do not comply with his desires. He may suggest that if you leave him, he will fall apart, that he cannot survive without you, that you are the only person keeping him together. In extreme cases, he may even hint at self-harm if you refuse to do what he wants. This is not love, this is coercion. Love should never feel like an emotional hostage situation where your freedom comes at the cost of another person's well-being. A healthy relationship is built on mutual care, not on the fear that setting a boundary will result in disaster. A manipulative man may also test your limits over time, pushing boundaries gradually so that each new infringement seems minor in comparison to the last. What may begin as small requests, checking your phone just to make sure you're safe, asking you to spend more time with him instead of your friends, can escalate into full-blown control before you even realize what has happened. Manipulation does not always happen in a single dramatic moment. It is often a slow erosion of independence, a steady conditioning that makes you believe that accommodating him is easier than resisting. By the time you recognize the extent of his influence, you may already feel trapped. What makes manipulation particularly dangerous is that it creates an illusion of love. A manipulative man will tell you that he only acts this way because he loves you so much. He will insist that his jealousy is a sign of deep care, that his need for control stems from a desire to protect you. He will make you feel as though leaving him would be a betrayal, as though the only way to prove your loyalty is to endure his behavior. But true love does not require proof in the form of suffering. True love does not seek to control, nor does it demand submission. It thrives in an environment of trust, respect, and freedom. Recognizing manipulation is not easy, especially when you care deeply for someone. It is difficult to accept that a person who claims to love you could also be the source of your emotional distress. But love should not leave you feeling confused, guilty, or powerless. Love should not require you to shrink yourself to accommodate another person's insecurities. And, most importantly, love should not make you question your own reality. If you notice a pattern of manipulation, you must take it seriously. Excusing the behavior will only allow it to continue. A man who manipulates you does not suddenly stop when given more chances. He stops when you refuse to be controlled. And sometimes, the only way to escape manipulation is to cut all contact completely. Because a person who does not respect your autonomy, your emotions, or your perception of reality is not someone you can reason with. He is someone you must walk away from before his control becomes so absolute that leaving no longer feels like an option. A fundamental aspect of a healthy relationship is the ability to take responsibility, not just for oneself, but for the impact one's actions have on others. Responsibility is the foundation upon which trust, growth, and stability are built. A man who refuses to take responsibility for his actions is not just neglecting a moral obligation, he is evading reality itself. And a person who refuses to confront reality is incapable of being a reliable partner, a trustworthy friend, or even a fully developed individual. Without responsibility, there is no personal growth, no genuine accountability, and no meaningful connection. A relationship with a man who refuses to acknowledge his faults is like a house built on sand. It will collapse under the weight of its own instability. One of the clearest signs that a man is incapable of taking responsibility is his tendency to blame others for everything that goes wrong in his life. If he loses his job, it's because his boss was unfair. If he gets into an argument, it's because other people don't understand him. If a relationship fails, it's always because of what his partner did or didn't do. He will never examine his own role in these situations because doing so would require him to acknowledge uncomfortable truths about himself. This kind of mindset is not just frustrating, it's dangerous. A person who consistently shifts blame onto others is avoiding the very mechanism that allows for growth. He remains stagnant, trapped in a cycle of self-deception, where he is always the victim and never the cause of his own misfortunes. Excuses become his primary tool for avoiding responsibility. He will always have a reason for his failures. He had a difficult childhood. Society is against him. People misunderstand him. While external circumstances can indeed shape a person's experiences, they do not absolve him of accountability. Many people have suffered hardships, and still chosen to rise above them. The difference between a responsible man and an irresponsible one is not the presence or absence of challenges, but the willingness to confront them honestly. A man who refuses to take ownership of his own life is not just making excuses, he is actively rejecting the possibility of self-improvement. And if he cannot improve himself, he certainly cannot contribute positively to a relationship. Another hallmark of irresponsibility is the inability to apologize sincerely. If he ever does say, "I'm sorry," it is often followed by justification rather than genuine remorse. He might say, "I'm sorry, but you made me angry," or "I'm sorry you feel that way," which is not an apology at all. A real apology requires an acknowledgement of wrongdoing, an understanding of its impact, and a commitment to change. A man who cannot apologize properly is a man who prioritizes his ego over the well-being of the relationship. He would rather protect his pride than mend the damage he has caused. This is not just a failure of character, it is a fundamental unwillingness to engage in the emotional labor that relationships require. Another deeply troubling aspect of irresponsibility is an inability to plan for the future. A man who refuses to take responsibility often lives in a state of chaos, financially, emotionally, and even physically. He makes impulsive decisions, spends recklessly, and fails to consider the long-term consequences of his actions. If he constantly finds himself in financial trouble, yet refuses to budget or plan, it is not just bad luck. It is a pattern of irresponsibility. If he repeatedly makes promises that he does not keep, it is not forgetfulness. It is a refusal to be accountable for his commitments. This type of instability does not just affect him, it affects everyone around him. A person who refuses to take control of his own life will inevitably become a burden to those who care about him. Irresponsibility is often accompanied by a deep-seated sense of entitlement. He believes that others should accommodate him, fix his problems, and tolerate his shortcomings without question. He may expect you to take on the role of caretaker, picking up the pieces when he makes a mess, soothing him when he is upset, and making excuses for his failures. Over time, this dynamic can become exhausting. Instead of a partnership, the relationship begins to resemble a parent-child relationship, where one person takes on the burden of responsibility while the other evades it. This is not sustainable. A relationship should be a union of two capable individuals, not a situation where one person is constantly carrying the weight of the other's irresponsibility. Now, perhaps the most damaging consequence of refusing to take responsibility is the erosion of trust. Trust is built on the expectation that both people in a relationship will be accountable for their actions. If a man consistently fails to follow through on his commitments, if he makes promises and breaks them, if he denies wrongdoing even when confronted with evidence, trust begins to disintegrate. And once trust is gone, the relationship becomes unstable, filled with doubt and uncertainty. A person who cannot be relied upon to take responsibility will never be able to provide the security and stability that a meaningful relationship requires. Some people stay in relationships with irresponsible men because they believe that with enough patience they can change them. They convince themselves that if they provide enough support, enough understanding, enough second chances, he will eventually become the man they hope he can be. But this is a dangerous illusion. Change cannot be forced upon someone who does not want it. A man who refuses to take responsibility will not suddenly wake up one day and decide to be accountable, especially if he has been allowed to avoid consequences for his actions. The harsh reality is that some people do not change because they do not see a need to, and the longer you tolerate irresponsibility, the more you enable it. Walking away from a man who refuses to take responsibility is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of self-preservation. You cannot build a stable, fulfilling relationship with someone who will not even take ownership of his own life. Love is not about carrying someone else's burdens while they refuse to lift a finger. Love is about mutual support, shared responsibility, and a commitment to growth. If a man cannot provide that, then staying with him will only lead to frustration, exhaustion, and disappointment. The truth is simple. A man who refuses to take responsibility is not just a poor partner, he is a liability. And you do not need to spend your life managing the consequences of someone else's failures. You deserve a relationship where accountability is not something that needs to be begged for, but something that is given freely. Because responsibility is not just about admitting mistakes, it is about building a life that is worthy of trust, respect, and love. And that is something no relationship can survive without. Trust is the foundation of any meaningful relationship. It is not merely a desirable quality, it is an absolute necessity. Without trust, there is no security, no stability, no sense of emotional safety. If a man is habitually dishonest, if deception is a pattern rather than an exception, then he is eroding the very foundation upon which any genuine connection must be built. A relationship with a dishonest man is not truly a relationship at all. It is an illusion, a carefully crafted facade that serves his interests while leaving you in a perpetual state of uncertainty and doubt. Dishonesty comes in many forms, and not all of them are immediately obvious. Some men lie outright, fabricating entire stories to conceal their actions, their intentions, or their failures. Others are more subtle, distorting the truth just enough to mislead you while maintaining a semblance of plausibility. And then there are those who deceive through omission, carefully leaving out key details, allowing you to operate under false assumptions without ever technically telling a lie. These forms of dishonesty are equally destructive because they all achieve the same end. They distort reality, manipulate your perception, and erode your ability to trust your own judgment. When a man lies to you, it is not just a betrayal of truth, it is a deliberate act of disrespect. He is assuming that his deception is superior to your right to know the truth. He is prioritizing his own convenience, his own desires, his own ability to avoid discomfort over your right to make informed decisions about your own life. A lie is not just a falsehood, it is an assertion of control. It is an attempt to shape your reality according to his terms, rather than allowing you to engage with the world as it actually is. One of the most dangerous aspects of dishonesty is that it forces you into a position where you are constantly second-guessing yourself. When a man lies to you repeatedly, you begin to question what is real and what is not. You find yourself replaying conversations, analyzing his words, searching for inconsistencies. This is not the behavior of someone in a healthy relationship. This is the behavior of someone who has been forced into a state of hypervigilance due to repeated deception. A relationship should be a place of peace, not a battlefield where you must constantly search for hidden truths. Dishonesty also breeds insecurity. When a man lies, he creates uncertainty. If he lies about small things, how can you trust him with big things? If he has been caught lying once, how do you know it is not happening again? This constant state of uncertainty places an emotional burden on you, one that should never exist in a loving relationship. You should not have to wonder whether the person who claims to love you is actually being honest with you. You should not have to live in a state of perpetual skepticism, trying to discern whether his words can be taken at face value. A dishonest man will often try to minimize the significance of his lies. He will say that it was just a small lie, that he didn't want to hurt you, that he didn't think it was a big deal. But this kind of justification is an insult to your intelligence. The issue is not merely the content of the lie, but the fact that he was willing to deceive you at all. A man who lies about small things has demonstrated that he is willing to lie. It is only a matter of scale. If he sees no problem with distorting the truth in minor matters, what will stop him from doing the same? The stakes are higher. The habit of dishonesty does not confine itself to trivial matters. It permeates every aspect of a person's character. Another critical factor to consider is whether the dishonesty is a one-time mistake or a pattern. Everyone makes mistakes, and a single instance of dishonesty, if followed by true remorse and corrective action, may be forgivable. But a man who lies as a matter of habit, who continually violates your trust, is demonstrating that he does not value honesty, because to deceive someone is to assume that they are undeserving of the truth, that their reality can be molded for the liar's benefit. This is not love, this is manipulation. A relationship with a dishonest man will inevitably become a relationship filled with broken promises. He will say he will change, and he will not. He will say he values honesty, and he will continue to deceive. He will tell you what you want to hear in the moment, only to do whatever serves him best later. If you find yourself repeatedly forgiving lies, believing promises that never materialize, you must recognize that what you are holding on to is not a relationship, but an illusion. The man you think he can become is not the man he actually is. Some women stay in relationships with dishonest men because they believe that they can change them, that if they provide enough love, enough patience, enough second chances, the lying will stop. But this is a mistake. Change does not come from external forces, it comes from within. A man who has not chosen to value truth on his own will not suddenly develop integrity because someone else desires it. No amount of love can turn a dishonest person into an honest one. Only he can decide to change, and if he has already demonstrated a pattern of deceit, it is unlikely that he sees any reason to do so. Walking away from a dishonest man is not an act of punishment, it is an act of self-respect. Trust is not something that can be constantly repaired once it has been broken repeatedly. It is not your job to rehabilitate a man who has shown you that deception is his default mode of operation. You are not obligated to stay in a relationship where truth is conditional, where honesty is a rare commodity rather than the standard. The reality is this: a man who lies is a man who does not respect you. A man who does not respect you is a man who does not deserve you. It does not matter if his lies are small or if his excuses are convincing. What matters is that he has chosen deception over truth, manipulation over integrity. And a relationship built on deception is not a relationship, it is a performance. One where you are the only one who believes in the authenticity of what is being presented. The decision to cut ties with a dishonest man is not just about leaving him, it is about choosing yourself. It is about choosing a life where you do not have to question the words of the person beside you, where you do not have to live in a state of uncertainty, where you can trust fully and be trusted in return. Honesty is not a negotiable trait in a partner. It is the very foundation upon which love, respect, and trust are built. And if a man cannot provide that, he is not a man worth keeping in your life. A man who lacks respect for you is a man who does not value your thoughts, your feelings, or your well-being. Respect is not a luxury in a relationship, it is a fundamental requirement. It is the foundation upon which love, trust, and commitment are built. Without respect, everything else crumbles. A man who does not respect you may claim to love you, but love without respect is hollow, self-serving, and ultimately destructive. If a man consistently disregards your opinions, belittles your feelings, or treats you as though your presence in his life is something to be taken for granted, he is showing you, whether through words or actions, that he does not see you as an equal, that he does not value your existence in the way that he should. Disrespect can take many forms. Sometimes it is overt, harsh words, condescending remarks, dismissive behavior. A man who openly belittles you, whether in private or in front of others, is showing you exactly how much or how little he values you. He may disguise his insults as jokes, brushing them off with a casual laugh or a statement like, "You're too sensitive." But there is a world of difference between playful teasing and consistent demeaning remarks. If you feel hurt by his words, if you find yourself hesitating to express your thoughts because you fear his reaction, then what you are experiencing is not harmless humor. It is a pattern of disrespect. Sometimes disrespect is more subtle. It can come in the form of indifference, an unwillingness to listen to you, a lack of consideration for your needs, a tendency to dismiss your concerns as unimportant. If you tell him that something he did upset you and he responds with, "It's not a big deal," or "You're overreacting," he is not just disagreeing with you, he is invalidating your emotions. He is telling you, in effect, that your feelings do not matter, that your perspective is not worth acknowledging. Over time, this kind of dismissal erodes your confidence, making you feel as though your emotions are irrational, as though your voice is something to be silenced rather than heard. Another clear sign of disrespect is a lack of consideration for your boundaries. Healthy relationships require mutual understanding and respect for personal limits. If you set a boundary, whether it is about personal space, communication, or how you expect to be treated, and he continuously disregards it, he is showing you that his desires take precedence over your comfort. A man who respects you will take your boundaries seriously, even if he does not fully understand them. A man who does not respect you will push against them, testing your limits, seeing how much he can get away with before you push back. And every time you allow him to cross a boundary without consequence, you teach him that your limits are flexible, that your comfort is secondary to his wants. Disrespect can also manifest in a lack of support. A partner should be someone who encourages you, who wants to see you succeed, who takes pride in your achievements. If a man consistently downplays your accomplishments, if he acts disinterested when you talk about your goals, if he responds to your success with jealousy rather than celebration, then he is not acting as a partner, he is acting as a competitor or a critic. He may discourage you from pursuing your ambitions, not because he genuinely believes they are unwise, but because he does not want to see you outgrow him. A respectful man will lift you up. A disrespectful man will find ways, subtle or overt, to hold you back. Perhaps one of the most damaging forms of disrespect is an inconsistency in how he treats you. A man who respects you will not treat you well only when it is convenient for him. His respect will not be conditional, dependent on his mood, his circumstances, or whether he feels like putting in the effort that day. If a man is kind and attentive one moment and dismissive or cruel the next, if his treatment of you fluctuates unpredictably, then he is not truly respecting you, he is managing you, keeping you in a state of uncertainty where you are always trying to win his approval, always trying to prove your worth to him. This is not love. This is emotional manipulation. And the longer you tolerate it, the harder it becomes to see it for what it truly is. A disrespectful man will often attempt to justify his behavior. He may blame stress, past experiences, or even you. If you call out his behavior, he may turn the tables, accusing you of being too demanding, too sensitive, too emotional. He may tell you that all relationships involve some level of conflict, that no one is perfect, that you should be more understanding. And while it is true that no one is perfect, there is a significant difference between imperfection and outright disrespect. No amount of stress or hardship justifies belittling a partner. No difficult past excuses treating someone with disregard. Respect is not something that should be dependent on circumstances. It is a fundamental expectation in any meaningful relationship. Some people stay in relationships with disrespectful men because they believe that, deep down, he loves them. They convince themselves that if they are patient, if they prove themselves worthy, if they endure long enough, he will eventually see their value and treat them with the respect they deserve. But this is a dangerous illusion. Respect is not something that must be earned in a relationship. It is something that should be given freely. If a man does not respect you from the beginning, he will not suddenly develop respect for you over time. In fact, the longer you tolerate his disrespect, the less he will value you. He will see that he can treat you poorly without consequence, that he can continue to disregard you, and you will still remain. The reality is that a relationship without respect is not a relationship. It is a situation in which one person is allowed to diminish the other without challenge. A man who does not respect you will not be able to love you in the way that you deserve. Love without respect is possessiveness, it is control, it is a desire to keep someone around for personal benefit rather than genuine care. If a man does not respect you, then staying with him will only teach you to lower your standards, to accept treatment that is beneath you, to settle for something that is far less than what you deserve. Walking away from a disrespectful man is not just about ending a relationship. It is about reclaiming your sense of self-worth. It is about recognizing that you deserve to be with someone who listens to you, who values your opinions, who treats you with kindness and consideration, not just when it is convenient for him, but as a fundamental principle. Respect is not optional. It is not something to be negotiated or begged for. It is the foundation of every meaningful connection. And if a man cannot give you that, then he is not a man you should keep in your life. Choosing to cut ties with a man who does not respect you is not an act of giving up. It is an act of standing up for yourself. It is an act of declaring that your feelings matter, that your boundaries deserve to be honored, that your voice is worthy of being heard. You do not need to stay in a relationship where you are made to feel small, where your worth is constantly questioned. You deserve a relationship where respect is not something you have to fight for, but something that is given freely. Because without respect, there is no real love, and you deserve nothing less than that. A relationship should be a place of trust, respect, and mutual growth. If a man exhibits behaviors that undermine your dignity, your confidence, or your well-being, then it is not just advisable, it is necessary to cut all contact and walk away. Dishonesty, manipulation, lack of accountability, emotional instability, and fundamental disrespect are not minor flaws to overlook. They are deep-rooted patterns that corrode the very essence of a healthy connection. Love cannot flourish in an environment where trust is repeatedly broken, where your worth is questioned, or where your emotions are dismissed. Leaving a man who exhibits these destructive behaviors is not an act of cruelty or impulsivity. It is an act of self-respect. It is a declaration that you refuse to tolerate treatment that diminishes you, that you recognize your value, and that you will no longer participate in a relationship that takes more from you than it gives. Cutting ties with a man who is harmful to your mental, emotional, or even physical well-being is not about punishing him. It is about choosing yourself. Some may argue that change is possible, that people can grow, that redemption is within reach. And while this is true, change must come from within, and it cannot be forced upon someone who has no intention of evolving. If a man has shown you repeatedly that he does not respect your boundaries, that he does not take responsibility for his actions, or that he refuses to engage in honest self-reflection, then waiting for him to become the person you need is an exercise in futility. Hope is not a strategy. A better future cannot be built on the wish that someone will one day wake up and become the partner you deserve. You are not obligated to endure mistreatment in the name of love. You do not need to shrink yourself to accommodate a man who refuses to grow. The world is vast, and there are people who will cherish you, respect you, and build with you rather than against you. But in order to find them, you must first have the courage to let go of what is harmful. You must choose yourself, honor your worth, and walk away from any man who makes you question it. The decision to cut contact is not always easy, but it is often necessary. It is the first step toward reclaiming your peace, your confidence, and your power. It is a decision that affirms that you will no longer settle for less than what you deserve. And in making that choice, you are not losing, you are gaining freedom, clarity, and the chance to build a life that is rooted in genuine love, honesty, and respect.